Now, the Indian startup ecosystem has grown leaps and bounds in the last 20 odd years. And what has also happened in the 20 years is that we have become a little more aware about how the startup ecosystem in India is different from what it is, say, in the West, in Silicon Valley, US, or even in China. And we have started to understand certain peculiarities of the Indian startup ecosystem. So just to give you a sense, right, over the last 10, 15 years, one theme which has been quite common is to say X for India, right? So it's like Uber for India, Amazon for India, or a whole lot of different type of models which have worked in the West, and they come to India and say, okay, this is this X for India. Some of them have worked, but a lot of them have actually not worked, not the way they have worked in the West. And there are reasons for that. For example, one particular behavior of how startups have operated in the West is that they go up, they go after adoption as against monetization. So if you have a digital app or a product, you'll say, okay, let me just get hundreds of millions of consumers to come and adopt it, and I will figure out how the monetization is going to happen. Some of the biggest businesses have been built this way. Google, Facebook, a whole lot of different type of businesses. However, that same model has not been very successful in building businesses in India, or Indian businesses which have followed that template in the West have not done that well. And there is a very logical reason for that. So the reason is that in India, we have a lot of adoption, much more than what it is in the West, while our ability and intent to pay is much lower than what it is in the West. So what happens? Hence, any product which has a certain kind of adoption, when you start to convert it into monetization, that ratio of percentage of your adopting consumers who are actually paying for your product or your solution, that turns out to be far inferior to what it is in the West, in the developed world, and hence your ability to translate a certain adoption into a certain revenue making business is much lower. Think about it this way. In India, we have far more people with mobile phones. Data is the cheapest in the world. Hence, we have massive adoption. So if you provide a free product, some kind of free music, free movies, free whatever, and then you'll have a lot of people coming and consuming it. But when you ask them for money, at first, there are the number of people who have the ability to pay well for digital products or any kind of other digital solution for something that they have not been paying historically. The number is low. And the percentage of people who can actually pay is low. Second, we are also culturally not attuned or say required, and we have not adopted to paying for digital products. A lot of different type of products. Hence, the number of people who actually pay for these solutions is very low. Think about even Google, Facebook, Netflix, Spotify, players that are like giants in the West, proven beyond any point of doubt in terms of their ability to offer value and get paying customers in the West, have failed in making a lot of revenue in India. They still use India as a DAO farm, which is effectively saying this is the place where you get a lot of users, but don't expect them to pay too much. And they're still playing it that way. The reason they have been able to do this is because they find their cash cow markets in the West and they make revenues from there, they get users from here, and kind of it balances. It becomes very difficult for Indian businesses which do not have that. So what happens if I'm making the same kind of product out of India? I will have all the consumers and adoption, but I have no cash cow. So if my primary market is India, I have no revenue pools to actually dip into to actually continue serving these large markets which are painfully difficult to get to monetize. And hence in India, that rule of high adoption means a reasonable chance of that translating into paying consumers, that rule just doesn't work, at least not as yet. It may change in the future, but for now a lot of that natural assumption coming from say people who have experiences in the West or would consume all the content and they're learning from how businesses were built in the Silicon Valley, that has not turned out to be true. And this is one big learning for everyone. And so should be for any founder or investor who are betting on the Indian market.